Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, we need to talk about Go Collect's hottest trending comics for the week of March 18th. And speaking of Go Collect, check it out. I got a little article in their blog section written by Joseph where he covered the release of my Kickstarter comic book, SANITY, Rise of the Occult. I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to check out the article. Of course, Kickstarter still going on, 17 days left to go. We hit our goal. I got the stretch goals in progress. And I'm really excited to get this book in people's hands. But with that all the way, of course, like, comment, subscribe. But let us get into this article here today. Of course, it is written by Matt Tuck. I will put a link in the description so you guys can do your own reading, but I will break it down for you as well. And coming in here at the number 5 spot is a very, very cool book, a very, very fun one. But this one, of course, is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Adventures, number 1, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 65 slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the book that came out in 1988, written by Michael Dooney, that would feature the first appearance of Bebop and Rocksteady and Krang in comic book form, and would also feature the first time that the Turtles would have their iconic colored bandanas. Now, of course, it was just the other week that we got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated film trailer done by Nickelodeon, and it got a lot of people in the community excited about the Turtles property and IP once again. We're all just hoping that, this one is finally going to be the one that just nails the tone, nails what we love about Turtles and what we've been looking for from the franchise for quite some time. And of course, this was one of the books that got really hot in 2021, when there was a lot of excitement around The Last Ronin, there's a lot of excitement about the Turtles franchise. People identified this book as being kind of a cool, unique key that, really related to the animated series that we all grew up on. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first print, the original first appearance of the team, has them rocking all the same red color. So, you get that kind of satisfying feeling of them having their very distinct colors in this one right here. And due to the recent release of the trailer, this book has been moving a lot in the market, certainly due to the fact that it is a much more affordable alternative compared to that of the original first appearance. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. CGC census has had 2,784, 9.8s have 536 on the census, fair market value 575, 30 new moving is 447, and you can see this is a book that, shot up like a lot of books. I mean, this one had an astronomical rise. Back in September of 2020, it was a $300 book, and then went all the way to peak prices of $1,800. I mean, that is absolutely insane. I mean, perhaps, this is a sale for the newsstand. Maybe there are some anomalies in there, but whatever the case is, you can see that this is a book that has absolutely trailed off ever since the heights of 2021 and 2022, and then now kind of where we are, it finally sort of found its bottom back to that $400 price point, which is right around the 2020 price, or at least a little bit higher. And now with this recent trailer, you're seeing a little bit of an uptick in the market. You can see a 550 here, a 439, a 400, a slash price of 600, a 550 right there. So definitely a book that is slowly once again starting to trend up. Then of course down here at the bottom, not going to see it slabbed to the low grade as being a 1988 book, but when you go into eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically you could see them being sold around that $40, $50, maybe $60 range. All right, let's go on now to the 4th hottest trending comic of the week. And the 4th hottest trending comic of the week is one that is not really surprising to be trending as well, and another classic book coming out of the Copper Age. But this one right here is The Batman Adventures number 12, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 61st slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the book that came out in 1993, written by Kelly Puckett, that would feature the first appearance of Harley Quinn. Now, I'm sure you guys are very familiar with this book. I mean, obviously, this has been a hot one over the course of the last few years, ever since we had Margot Robbie playing the Harley Quinn character, all the way dating back to, the Suicide Squad. But over the course of these last few months or so, this is one that has been absolutely crashing, like falling off the cliff. But of course, no book is ever truly dead as long as we have continuous pop cultural things that bring the character to limelight. And of course, we're going to be getting this sequel to the Joker film starring Joaquin Phoenix. And this time we're going to be having Lady Gaga play the Harley Quinn character. And there's been a lot of recent imagery that has been leaked online. We've seen behind the scenes clips of the Joker running around. We've seen behind the scenes photos of Lady Gaga on the set of the film. And of course, that's going to cause comic book collectors to get excited once again, bringing this book back into the trending list. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. Go Collect has this CGC census at 8,118. So definitely on the higher side, but I suppose not as high as some of the other Copper Age books of the time period. 9.8s have 1,125. Fair market value is 2,800. 30-day moving right in line to that, around the $2,800 range. But you can see this is a book that, definitely shot up super high in the heights of 2021, where it was almost hitting that $5,000 price point. Like a lot of the other books, fell off the cliff, found its bottom in November, and with the recent images and recent leaks, kind of shot back up to the $3,000 price point. And being a 1993 book, not going to see it slabbed here at the low grade at least too often, but generally speaking, when you go onto eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically they'll set you back around that $300, $350, maybe $400 range. All right, let's move on now to the third hottest trending comic of the week. And the third hottest trending comic of the week is one that I'm actually really happy to see on the trending list, because I do actually think that ironically, this book might just be undervalued at this current moment in time. But the book, of course, we're talking about is Werewolf by Night 32, new to the list, now sitting in the 56 slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the book written by Doug Moench that came out in 1975 and would feature the first appearance of the character known as Moon Knight. Now, I don't have to explain Moon Knight to you guys. Of course, you guys know this character. We got the Moon Knight show back in the beginning of 2022. Of course, Moon Knight being played by Oscar Isaac. And I would say that that show was, generally speaking, pretty disappointing to a lot of people that, were hoping that it was going to be a good representation of the character. And for that reason, coupled with all the other economic factors that have hit the comic book market, this book had a huge fall from grace. But, based on where it is now, being that there were so many people that were selling this book, I mean, this was a book that at times had been selling under its 2020 price. So it felt like a really good buying opportunity, being that Moon Knight is obviously still going to be a big character in the MCU. And of course, recently we've been having a lot of murmurs about, Moon Knight Season 2. We saw the reveal of Rama-Tut in Quantumania. So a lot of people thinking, with Moon Knight's connection to Egypt, they could tie that into, Kang and Rama-Tut with his connection to Egypt. Maybe that ties back into the Fantastic Four and how they met Rama-Tut, back in their comic book run. So a lot of people are thinking that Moon Knight is going to have an important role to Kang, who clearly is the big bad of this saga. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. CGC Census has it at the 5,070 range, which is, generally speaking, relatively kind of high, depending on your tolerance for what is a high supply versus not a high supply. But actually, in comparison to some of the other Bronze Age books, that is not as much. And it makes sense, being that Werewolf by Night 32 was probably not a book that sold that well back in the day. 9.8s have 19 on the census. Fair market value is $42,000. I would love to see what that would sell for today. I can't imagine that it would hit that number. Let's take a look at some of the grades that have recent sales. 9.2s have 279 on the census. Fair market value is $4,300. 30-day moving right in line to that. But let's compare that to the height of 2021. Definitely a book that had its pullback like many others, where it was selling for the $7,000, almost $8,000 range. I think the height actually was $9,000. You can see right there in May of 2021. Last sale for this one, of course, was the $4,000 range. So basically had a pullback of half. But you can see, if you take off the 2021-2022 chart and you just kind of follow the cursor, this book has been on a slow and steady rise over the course of these last, 10 years or so, to where it is selling now. Basically seems to be, a good entry point if you're someone who believes, that comic books have value and might continue to go up in value at some point in the future. 7.0s have 413 on the census, 30-day moving around the $1,000 range. And like the 9.2 graph, you can see if you take off 2021 and 2022, this book has been on a slow and steady increase over these course of the last 10 years or so. And then of course, down here at the bottom, you might see it from time to time slabbed at the low grade, but generally speaking, when you go onto eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically they sell around that $700 to maybe $800 range, of course, depending on the grade and depending on the deal that you can find for yourself. All right, let's go on now to the second hottest trending comic of the week. And the second hottest trending comic of the week is one that is also not surprising to see on this list, one that we had seen on other trending lists recently. But of course, this book is Daredevil number 183, new to the list, now sitting in the 52nd slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, it's the book that came out in 1982, written by Frank Miller, that would feature the first meeting and battle of Daredevil and the Punisher. Now, I'm sure you guys know why this book is hot. We recently got the announcement that Jon Bernthal will be returning to the role of the Punisher in the Daredevil Born Again series. They've already started filming Daredevil Born Again. We've been seeing, behind the scenes shots. We've been seeing all other casted characters come out. Some of that stuff has been coming out into the blog sphere. But, you know, of course, everyone is excited to see what Jon Bernthal can do in the MCU as the Punisher. I mean, some people actually may be a little bit scared of what the MCU is going to do to the Punisher. But either way, we're all going to be here to see it. And this book right here got really, really hot due to the fact that, you know, anytime you have a first meeting of two characters that we're going to see on screen, that's always going to be very, very exciting for comic book collectors. But even that all of aside, this of course comes from the Daredevil run where Frank Miller was absolutely killing it. Frank Miller, one of the greatest writers and artists to ever be in the comic book industry, and his work on Daredevil has always been significant. And this right here is just one of those books that people just love to have in their collection. But as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. CGC Census has it at 1,843. 9.8s have 471. Fair market value, 30-day moving at least, is $280. Let's take a look and see where this book had been before, where of course there were some peak sales when money was going free back in 2022 and 2021. This book hitting that $400, $500 price point, but you could see, you know, kind of where it has recently leveled off. There's a slight uptick due to all this excitement for Jon Bernthal's return. Then of course down here at the bottom, not going to see it slabbed at the low grade. In fact, this is not actually a book that is slabbed that often, but when you go onto eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, now you can find them being sold around that $25 to $40 range. All right, let's go on now to the hottest trending comic of the week. And the hottest trending comic of the week is a classic book, one that makes sense why it's trending as it was related to one of the other books on the list this week. But this one, of course, is Batman, The Killing Joke, up 11 spots, now sitting in the 40th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, it's the book that came out in 1988, written by Alan Moore. That would be the first issue of the famous titled series, The Killing Joke. Now, The Killing Joke, for a lot of people, is one of Batman and the Joker's most iconic and classic storylines there has ever been in comic books. There was that animated movie that people also really, really enjoyed, but this has been one of the great reads when it involves these two characters, really, really emphasizing their relationship, how they need each other, how they're, you know, this perfect kind of yin and yang opposite forces. And I think this book has always done a good job in explaining that relationship. Also, of course, look at that cover. I mean, it's one of the most iconic Joker covers out there. And ultimately, I think that that is why it is such a popular book. 99.9% of collectors are never going to be able to afford a Batman #1. So if you want a book that kind of represents your love for the Joker, well, the Batman The Killing Joke is kind of that perfect price point for a lot of comic book collectors. Now, so why this book is recently trending? Well, like I said, with the Harley Quinn book, you know, we've been recently getting, you know, all of this hoopla surrounding the Joker 2 sequel. A lot of people are excited to see Joaquin Phoenix return to the character. I mean, there's even more Joker talk about Willem Dafoe maybe wanting to play the Joker. So there's always going to be a lot of Joker cultural awareness out there in the market, making this book always desired and always being looked at by comic book collectors. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. CGC Census has it at 9,384. This is only, of course, for the first print, so there are a lot of books out there. 10.0s actually have 14 on the census. Hasn't been a sale in quite a while, but the record price in grade for that is $6,500. 9.9s actually have 49 on the census, and there was a sale recently at the $2,800 price point. That recent sale could actually be the record high price for that grade as well. 9.8s have 4,097 on the census. Fair market value is $240. 30-day moving right along that line of $240. You can see that this is a book that definitely goes up and down quite a bit. I mean, there's going to be a lot of copies out there, so any given day, any given sale. But generally speaking, over the long term, this has been a book that has grown in value. And then down here at the bottom, you know, being a 1988 book, not going to see it slabbed at the low grade, but when you go into eBay looking for raw copies, typically you can see them being sold around that $100 to $120 price point, depending on the deal and depending on the grade. Well, that is all for this video. Those were Go Collect's hottest trending comics of the week. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys have any of these books? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content. Of course, Sanity, Rise of the Occult Kickstarter still going on. I'll put a link in the description. Definitely consider backing if you are a fan of this type of stuff. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. See you all in the next video.